In the previous lecture, we did a quick introduction to physiology. We talked about planes, the definitions on where other things are in relation to other parts of the organs in the body, and as well as basic movement names and functions. In this lecture, we'll look into regions, cavities, and cells. All of these are very important in helping understand what physiology is, how it works, as well as the basic components that make up physiology and anatomy as a whole. So the main region of the body are talked about in this slide. The things to know is that the axial region consists of the head, neck, thorax, abdomen, and pelvis, and these also comprise the main axis of the body. The appendicular region consists of attached parts of the body to the main axis of the body, such as the limbs. So you can see here in this skeleton diagram right here, that the axial region is the red part. So you're going to have mainly the head, the neck, as well as the pelvis. However, the appendicular region are all the limbs that are attached to it. And these are the two main regions that we're going to look at when we talk about physiology. And it's very important to understand the difference between the axial and the appendicular regions. Then let's talk a little bit about the cavities of the body. The cavities help hold the internal organs together and to the body itself. So the cranial cavity is the internal space of the cranium that houses the brain. The vertebral cavity is formed in the vertebral column and houses the spinal cord. So you can see here that this point right here is the cranial cavity as it houses the brain, while this blue line that comes down the neck and through the spine is the vertebral column and the vertebral cavity that houses the spinal cord. Lastly, the green section here and here are the thoracic, or this upper one here is the thoracic cavity that is formed by the thoracic wall and houses some organs of the respiratory system and the cardiovascular system, particularly the lungs and the heart. The abdominal cavity is this middle one right here that contains the digestive organs as well as the abdomen. And lastly, the pelvic cavity is the lowest green structure down here, and it contains the bladder, reproductive organs, and the rectum. And you can see it right here as well in the anterior view, while the lateral view shows it from the side. Now let's talk a little bit about cells. At the most smallest and basic level of anatomy and physiology, and for the human body itself, the most smallest structure is the anatomical unit of cells. They are the life of all living things, and all of it is started at the cellular level with cells. And cells have a very complex structure, and its components interact with each other and as well internally to perform very specific functions. I know this is probably a review for you, but I'll go through it quickly just to give you a quick rundown of what cells are, just in case you need a brush up on it. And so, first of all, you should note that about the two main components of a cell. There's really the nucleus and the cytoplasm. We also have organelles that float through the cytoplasm, but ultimately the two main components of a cell are the nucleus and cytoplasm. The nucleus is the central part of the cell, which acts as a control area to maintain the existence of the cell. It also stores the DNA, which gives it functions and coding that gives it understanding of what its purpose is. Then you have the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the fluid inside a cell, which acts as the cell factory. It is surrounding the nucleus in the cell and receives the instructions of components manufacturing from the nucleus through chemical messengers. So these are the two main components that form the cell. And seen through this cute little graphic right here, the cytoplasm can be this big darker blue, and the lighter blue where the nucleus is can be considered to be where the nucleus is. Then we also have the cell membrane, which is the outermost function of the cell. And it is the communication channel of cells to other cells and is done through the plasma membrane. It is permeable to the molecules with specific sizes of shapes and also different types of cellular and chemical components. And this is known as selective permeability because it only allow some cells to go through. For example, it will allow this triangle, this long oval shape, this star fragment, and this circle to go through. However, the trapezoid here, this longer oval, and this other shape, this brown one, cannot be allowed through because it is only permeable to certain types of molecules and cells. And that's how the selective permeability works. Another thing about the cell membrane is that the permeability of the membrane is based on two processes: simple diffusion and active diffusion. Simple diffusion is that the molecules pass through the membrane from high to low concentration. It is simple because no energy is required. Since it's going with the gradient from high to low, this is a favorable reaction, and therefore the cell doesn't need energy to put one molecule into it based off of the concentration. However, active diffusion is when an energy source within the body needs to be consumed in order to have a pump shoot the molecule from a low concentration to a high concentration, because this is against the gradient, and pushing against the gradient requires energy. And so therefore, as you can see in this lower image, an ATP molecule, or an energy source, this is abbreviated from adenosine triphosphate, is acted onto a molecule pump, and the molecule pump will then take a low concentration molecule and put it into a high concentration. But because this goes against the gradient, it is then considered to be active transport because it requires energy.